Alright, so get this. The last officially licensed PSP game was released in 2016, marking 11 years since the handheld's first debut onto the market. Well, at least in North America. But what many people aren't aware of about this little pocket rocket over here was that it was also home to a massive, sketchy, underground bootleg market that to this day is still producing and releasing unofficial games onto the handheld. So in today's video, I'll be taking you on a trip down the rabbit hole of underground PSP games. From playing the scuff version of Black Ops 6 to exploring a project aiming to port the original Stalker game over to the PSP. This is exploring bootleg PSP games. So what exactly is a PSP bootleg? Well, PSP bootlegs come in all different shapes and sizes. The most popular example that you'll find online would be the countless knockoff consoles attempting to mimic the PSP handheld versus the actual games themselves. If you've ever been on websites like AliExpress or even Deal Extreme from back in the day, chances are you've probably come across these before. You got classics like the Pop Station, the X6 Game Player, the ever-beloved Ioni A-7288, and my personal favorite, the PCP Station. Then you have what's called Russian PSP DVD bootlegs. Now these are really cool. So instead of going for the effort of replicating and creating their own bootleg UMD discs, the bootleggers in Russia would simply burn multiple PSP games onto a blank DVD, slap a label on it, and distribute them throughout game shops and flea markets across the country. The idea is that when you purchase one of these from your local magazine, all you would have to do is simply pop in this dodgy looking DVD into your PC, transfer the games over to your PSP, and Bob's your uncle. From what I could find online, these bootleg discs were very popular between the mid to late 2000s. This was mostly due to the fact that the PSP security was about as robust as a 1-year-old jug of milk, which made it incredibly easy for anyone to download and play pirated games on the handheld. A lot of these DVD bootleg discs would also include the necessary software needed to fully hack your PSP, with stuff like the latest version of Dark Alex's custom firmware, tools to downgrade your PSP, as well as other fun, useful shit like an ebook reader, a multimedia player, etc. Fun fact, while doing research for this video, I found one bootleg disc that claims to have Counter-Strike 20 for the PSP. I have no idea what the hell that's supposed to be, but I thought it was kinda cool. Now, the only other example of an underground PSP game that I could find out in the wild was the infamous Bomba patch. If you're not familiar with Bomba, it's an incredibly popular patch for the PES series that's been around since the 2000s. It's also widely considered to be the best-selling unofficial game in Brazil. Anyways, nowadays, it seems like the internet likes to refer to PSP homebrew games and tool conversion mods as bootlegs, not necessarily in a derogatory way, rather for the simple fact that it wasn't officially licensed by Sony themselves, which kinda makes sense when you think about it. Since we're already on the topic of homebrew games, I guess I'll start here first. Alrighty, so there are hundreds if not thousands of homemade PSP games floating around on the interwebs nowadays. One of the biggest genres within this scene is surprisingly first-person shooters. You got OG classics like good old Turok, which is what I would describe as being a hybrid of both Turok and GoldenEye on the N64. Turok is one of those games that was incredibly influential in the earlier days of the homebrew scene, as it offered both an hour-long single-player campaign as well as an 8-player online multiplayer mode. For giggles and farts, I tried to see if I could play it online, but unfortunately I couldn't seem to get it to work. Thankfully, at least you still have the option to play with bots, which is pretty cool if you ask me. If there's something that really stood out to me the most about Turok, it's its graphics, as it's hands to the ground one of the best looking unofficial games on the PSP. The whole low poly aesthetic that the N64 has really seems to fit like a glove on the handheld. Everything from the wide dynamic lighting to how it managed to maintain a consistent frame rate throughout my entire playthrough is a feat on its own. And to think that this was all achieved in 2008 really goes to show just how well this game has aged over time. Another great example of just how talented this homebrew community is with this game called Call of Duty Zombies Portable. This is an incredible remake of the World at War Zombies experience that was built from the ground up for the PSP using a modified version of the Quake engine. It includes a ton of original and custom maps, over 10 guns to choose from. It also has stuff like the mystery box, pack-a-punch, being able to buy weapons off a wall, and basically anything I can think of from the 2008 classic is here, which is really cool. But what makes this game so great isn't just the buttery smooth gameplay or how it perfectly captures that crap in your pants realization that you're about to be outnumbered. Rather, the beauty of all this lies directly in its controls. You see, the team over at NZP somehow found a way to make a first-person shooter feel actually good to play on a PSP. Speaking from childhood experience, I can tell you right now that playing any FPS on a PSP has always felt kinda awkward to use, and it would always result in some nasty hand cramps. So I don't know if Team NZP hired Chris Angel to pull all this trickery off or what, but it's just perfect. There's really no other way to describe it. The fact that this game has been in active development since 2009 probably has something to do with it, but regardless, I would go as far as say that this is the gold standard when it comes to first-person shooters on a PSP. You'll love to see it. But before we dive even deeper into the PSP Bootleg rabbit hole, a quick word from today's video sponsor, Redmagic. Now, Redmagic is a gaming Android smartphone company that's been dropping some very innovative gaming phones ever since 2018, and they've just announced their brand new flagship device, the Redmagic Pro 11, the world's first mass-produced smartphone with built-in liquid cooling. It features a Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 processor, a 7500 mAh battery, a gorgeous 6.8-inch 144Hz AMOLED display, a 3.5mm headphone jack, you'd love to see it. The 11 Pro also has this cool built-in 24,000 RPM fan that keeps your palms from sweating. It takes surprisingly decent photos both in low light and daytime conditions, and since this is tailored for gamers, it also has built-in RGB lighting that makes this cool sound whenever you enable it. But even if mobile gaming isn't your thing, the Redmagic Pro 11 is still more than capable at running practically every single emulator under the sun that you can throw at it with ease. It even runs PlayStation 3 games surprisingly well too. You gotta love it. The Redmagic 11 Pro goes on sale later this month on November 19th at 7 AM EST. However, you can purchase an early bird voucher starting November 13th that gives you an exclusive one-day early access to secure your order. I'll leave a link to where you can purchase a Redmagic 11 Pro in the description down below. Thank you once again to Redmagic for sponsoring today's video. Now back to some goofy PSP bootlegs. Alright, so next up, I decided to explore the lesser known part of the PSP modding community. This is what I call the PPSSPP bootlegs. So PPSSPP bootlegs in a nutshell is when someone goes for the effort of hacking a PSP game to the point where it's only playable using emulation. A lot of these bootlegs usually amount to either adding custom textures into the game as well as adding other subtle changes, like replacing the in-game soundtrack for an example. If you've ever played or seen one of those scuffed GTA PS2 bootleg games before, it's kinda like that. I'll start first with Black Ops 6 PSP edition. Now going into this game, I really didn't know what to expect if I'm being completely honest, as the title alone sounded pretty cursed. And it turns out that all this is a texture mod for Call of Duty Roads of Victory that attempts to make it look like you're playing Black Ops 6, and that's about it. From what I could tell, Dluk managed to replace all the in-game menus, retextured most of the character models, as well as completely remodeling parts of the environment to make it look somewhat reminiscent to Black Ops 6. I was hoping that he would have at least gone for the effort of replacing the gun models to help sell the whole early 90s aesthetic, but unfortunately, it just ends up looking like your typical 2000s World War II shooter with some sprinkle of changes here and there. Don't get me twisted, it's a decent texture mod all things considered, but I'd be capping to say that it reminded me of anything resembling Black Ops 6. Next up, we have Red Dead Redemption 2. Alright, so this one was kinda neat. You see, this is a mod for Gun Showdown that tries its very best to make it resemble RDR2. Like for an example, when you first start the game, it greets you with the opening cutscene from Red Dead Redemption 2 that's been compressed to shit.
Arthur and I, we're gonna ride out, see if we can find one of them. And this? Just for a short bit.
What's nutty about this is how after the cutscene ends, the game cuts straight into the intro of Gun Showdown, which makes the whole point of having the RDR2 cutscene dumb since none of it makes any sense. Like you go from freezing your balls off in 144p to then shooting quail with discount Willie Nelson 1 minute later. Like it's just so busted, man, I love it. Anyways, in terms of notable changes here, Cole, the main protagonist in Gun, has been replaced with what I believe is supposed to be Arthur Morgan, and the environment is a lot more vibrant compared to the base game. I'm going to assume that this was intentional to mimic the art style of Red Dead Redemption 2, but what I find weird is how by changing the environmental textures, the modders also removed a lot of the foliage and level of detail within the game's world, which actually makes it look worse when compared side by side to the original game. Mind you, this could have been due to something as simple as a graphical glitch within the emulator or some shit, but your guess is as good as mine. Outside of that, RDR2 on the PSP is just okay. At least I got the setting right this time around. I also managed to come across a sketchy looking bootleg called Grand Theft Auto Team Fortress 2 Edition. From my limited time with this game, it seems like Wendhel replaced Vince Vance with this goofy ass version of the heavy weapons guy.
Vic Vance reporting for duty, sir!
While also going for the effort of adding some cell shaded goodness into Vice City, like how the military base now looks completely different compared to the base game. One cool detail that I noticed is how the minimap has been replaced with a radar to how Wendhel gave the UI some subtle TF2 flair. It might not blow your socks off completely, but it's definitely a nice touch. However, if I'm being honest here, it would have been nice to see more of a TF2 influence, as outside of that, it's practically the same vanilla Vice City Stories experience. Something like replacing the pedestrian models with characters from Team Fortress, or even going for the effort of adding TF2 weapons, like the Pyro's Axe, or even the Scout Scattergun as an example, would have sold the whole crossover a lot better, at least in my opinion. Outside of that, there isn't much else worth talking about here, so A1 for effort, I guess.
I kill anyone for $1,000.
Alrighty, so next up we have what's called Infinity War of Crossover V5. This is a DBZ Budokai Tenkaichi tag team ROM hack that replaces all the character models in the game with characters from the Marvel Universe, brain rot, movies, Nintendo, TV shows, etc. Just like its older brother, the PlayStation 2, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of these DBZ PSP bootlegs floating around in the interwebs. Out of all of them that I could choose from, I chose Infinity War since it's been in development for around 4 years now, and for the simple fact that it looked completely batshit insane. Alright, so if I had to describe Infinite War of Crossover V5, say that 3 times fast in a single word, it would be nutty.
Take this!
In terms of new characters, Infinity War offers well over 30 plus new custom fighters to choose from. You got Freddy Krueger, Master Chief, Skid B Toilet,
Don't forget the training we did in the spaceship.
Right!
Mr. Beast, Leon Kennedy, the Terminator, Ghostface,
I'll put you in your place!
Pepsi Man, Predator, Peter Griffin, and that bear thing from Friday Night at Freddy's. From my limited experience with Tag Team, I couldn't really tell if Elvis had added any new attack animations or made any mechanical changes to the gameplay. As far as I'm concerned, it didn't seem to be all that different compared to the base game, but it's kinda hard to tell. If I had to take a gander gun to my groin, I would bet that this is the exact same Tag Team experience, albeit with a lot more goofier character models. However, another change that Elvis had made for this mod was replacing the game's soundtrack with what I would best describe as his iPod's playlist. You got everything from Coldplay, Lady Gaga, Starset, Evanescence, and Linkin Park. It's definitely something else, but you know what? Different strokes for different folks, or better yet, whatever floats your boat. One of the things that I've always loved about these DBZ bootlegs is being able to play on the custom arenas, since I find that it helps seal the deal per se in capturing the whole crossover aesthetic. And although Infinity War does offer a few custom arenas, most of them amount to being just texture mods for existing arenas in the base game. I'm going to assume that the PSP DBZ scene still hasn't found a way to port custom arenas into Tag Team just yet. But if it ever does become possible one day, I think that this game could really benefit from that. Outside of the new characters, textures, and the goofy track list, there really isn't much else to say about this mod if I'm being completely honest. If I can make a suggestion to Elvis, maybe look into finding a way to swap each character's voice line, as I've always found that the custom voice lines and stuff like Tenkai Cobra 3 It adds that extra layer of wacky tobacconess to these type of bootlegs, and I definitely think it would have made a big difference here. Anyways, Infinity War of Crossover V5 is a true hoot and holler and gives you more than enough reason to revisit Tag Team again. I would strongly recommend checking it out if you ever get the chance. Alrighty, so the next game on the list is kind of like a fever dream. This is what's called S.T.A.L.K.E.R Portable. Now, S.T.A.L.K.E.R Portable is a homemade port of the 2007 classic Shadow Chernobyl that has been faithfully recreated and built from the ground up for the PSP. The team behind this project, better known as Q-Team, was able to achieve this feat by using a modified version of the Quake engine. It is also worth mentioning that the build that I'll be covering in today's video is an updated version of the project created by fellow content creator Rootanola, if I'm saying that right. According to him, he's added some additional quality of life features to the port, as well as going for the effort of translating the game from Russian to English. Also, a big shout out to my homie Retro Calico for suggesting this game for the video. He also covered S.T.A.L.K.E.R Portable on his channel a few months back, as well as a few other homebrew first-person shooters on the PSP. I would highly recommend checking it out, it's a banger of a video. So when you jump into S.T.A.L.K.E.R Portable for the first time, the game spawns you inside this bunker in Rookie Village, listening to whatever good old Citrovich is going on about.
Заодно посмотрим, как быстро у тебя башка после амнезии прояснится.
Just like how it was at the beginning of Shadow Chernobyl. From here, you can choose to accept his quest, if you want to call it that, or you can simply say f all that and go explore the zone at your own pace. The choice is yours. Speaking of which, if there's one thing that this mod excels at, it's how it perfectly captures that Stalker ambiance to a T. Like, just take a listen to it for yourself.
Брешут все по поводу радиации. Я тут уже фиг знает сколько сижу и хоть бы хны. А второй ему в ответ: точно, точно. Врут собаки.
I love how this game doesn't suffer from any of that eggs on a frying pan type of sound compression that so many other PSP games have. Apparently Rootanola went for the effort of remastering the game's audio without having to compromise on the actual sound quality, which is pretty commendable in my books. Now, it's worth mentioning that S.T.A.L.K.E.R Portable is still in the early days of development, which means that there aren't a whole lot of things that you can do just yet. If I had to summarize my journey, I would say that I spent half of it walking across the map, looting the odd house here and there and fighting off some wild dogs. I eventually stumbled across this cool underground tunnel that was filled with other stalkers and mutants, and I did this side quest where I had to go find a med pack to help revive this dude.
Я своим в лагере обязательно передам, что ты мне помог.
That's really about it. What surprised me the most though is how despite it running on a PSP, the Q-Team still somehow managed to retain the game's semi-open world without the frame rate immediately soiling itself. I don't know what black magic they pulled off to get all of this to work, but big kudos to the team on this one, as it couldn't have been an easy feat. Moving on, let's talk about guns. So in S.T.A.L.K.E.R Portable, there isn't a huge selection of weapons to choose from, but there still is a decent amount of variety here. You got stuff like the AKM-74U, the pistol, and the sawed-off shotgun. The combat is what I would describe as feeling like, well, Stalker. I wouldn't go as far as say that fighting swarms of wild dogs is what I consider as exhilarating, but it works. Fun fact, GSC Game Worlds, the developer behind the Stalker series, originally had the idea of creating a Stalker game for both the Xbox 360 and the PSP. Thanks to this internal 100-page document that leaked online a few years back, we now know that the PSP version would have been a third-person shooter and taken on more of a linear approach compared to the semi-open world level design from its PC counterpart. Based on what I could find online, GSC got as far as creating a working prototype of the game, but unfortunately, the project ended up being cancelled sometime in late 2006, simply due to the fact that they didn't have enough staff to work on it full time, which definitely blows chunks. If you guys are interested in learning more about this cancelled project, I'll leave a link to the Reddit post that details the backstory behind it in the description down below. Anyways, I gotta say man, S.T.A.L.K.E.R Portable ended up being one of the most impressive PSP homebrew games that I've come across so far. Sure, it might not be a one-to-one replica to the original PC experience, but this is the closest thing that we'll ever get to a portable Stalker experience, and for that reason alone, I would strongly recommend checking it out if you ever get the chance. Next up, we have something that's pretty cool. This is what's called Tony Hawk's Project Mod. Tony Hawk's Project Mod is a total conversion mod for Project 8 that aims to be the ultimate crossover Tony Hawk game for the PSP. It was created by fellow content creator Ironhawk, who's been working on this project for the past 5 years, posting regular dev updates on his YouTube channel. Now, growing up, I used to play a shit ton of Thug 2 Remix, and it's always had a special place in my heart. So when this mod came across my desk, I knew I had to cover it. Alrighty, so Pro Mod has a ton of content, so much so that if I covered every single detail, this video would be like an hour long. So for the sake of time, I'll focus on the things that I found to be the most interesting. Let's start first with the levels. So Project Mod brings in a bunch of different maps from various Tony Hawk games. I'm talking stuff like Santa Cruz from Thug 2 Remix, Canada from Pro Skater 3, the Mall from Pro Skater 1, even Skatopia from Thug 2. And if you remember that map Ruins from American Wasteland, that's also here too. I gotta say that every level that I played on felt practically identical to its home console counterpart, to the point where it almost felt like it was ported by Neversoft themselves. One would think they would have to go for the effort of deep frying the original maps for them to work on a PSP, but thankfully that isn't the case here. So good stuff. There's also a ton of brand new custom skaters added to Project Mod. You got classics like being able to play as Shrek, Wee Man, Jimbo, the Call of Duty soldier, this Roboto dude, and of course Little John. What's also rad is how the mod completely overhauls the Crazy Skater feature. Now, in the base game, the Crazy Skater feature, to put it bluntly, was kinda shit. So instead of trying to fix a broken clock twice, Hawk decided to replace the feature altogether with a Thug 2 Crazy Skater system, which is apparently superior in every conceivable way. And that's just scratching the surface, as he also managed to add a lot of other quality life improvements that address a lot more of the sore points within the PSP port of Project 8. A great example of this is how he brought back the Create Trick feature, a mode that was not originally available in the base game. I tried it out for myself and it seems to be above my pay grade since I couldn't wrap my head around how to use it properly, but you know what, it's definitely a nice touch regardless. I think the main reason I enjoyed Project Mod so much is that it leans more into adding new content into the game versus digging around with the gameplay mechanics. Maybe it's just a nostalgia doing the talking here, but I think by adding new content into the game while keeping the gameplay untouched was a smart move. By doing this, you still retain the rhyme and reason into what makes this game so addictive in the first place, while giving people even more of a reason to revisit this gem. In my opinion, the Tony Hawk PSP games, at least in my eyes, have always been mechanically sound, to the point where there's really not much else you can do to perfect it. It's just perfect the way it is, you know? The only other thing I can think of off the dome that would make Project Mod even better is if Ironhawk took all the soundtracks from the Tony Hawk games and threw them into a single playlist. And the thing is that Neversoft has always had such a great ear when it comes to cultivating fire soundtracks, especially in the original Underground. Big shout out to Lord Quaz and Cannibal Ox. And I believe by blending all the music together into this fat ass track list, it would definitely complement the game and fit the whole crossover vibe of the mod quite well. Anyways, long story short, Project Mod is hands down one of the best PSP ROM hacks that you can play in 2025. It improves on virtually every aspect of Project 8 while still retaining the soul and charm that made the game so addicting in the first place. If you haven't already guessed by now, I would strongly recommend checking it out if you ever get the chance. Also, a big shout out once again to Redmagic for sponsoring today's video. A quick reminder that the Redmagic 11 Pro goes on sale November 19th at 7 AM EST. I'll leave a link to where you can pick one up for yourself in the description down below. But before I end this video off, I'd like to give a quick shout out to the following YouTube members for their continued support. The following members are Hydraulic Monkey, Hurdy, Blake Love, OG Newbie, Mashmallow, Bob Loves Cutie Pie, Burrito Uzumaki, Kali X, Matthew Senis, Max7, No Name, PC Master Game Race, Mike_Awk, Timbo TK, Carlos the Bird 69, Baba Lagaga, Baba Yagaga, It's Chachaz, Dawn the Second, Ale Reznov, Low Rank God, Jimmy, Twin Tin Brother, Billy Hatcher 643, Pyra, Adam, Wade's Retro Revive, Ethan Phillips, Chrissy TM, Za, Time Tunnel 4956, Canadian Jelly, R.I.P, and Fruzilla. Thank you guys so much, it is greatly appreciated. And that was exploring bootleg PSP games. I hope you guys enjoyed it. As per usual, I'm working on a few projects right now. I'm hoping to get at least 2 or 3 more videos out before the end of the year, so stay tuned for that. Anyways, if you enjoy this style of content, please consider leaving a like or even a subscription. It's greatly appreciated. But until next time, fellas, Peace.
The landing wheels aren't retracting!
Yeah? And the number 2 nozzle won't work either.
What? Are you for real? We can't land
Well,
without them! I knew I should.
whatever
have.
happens,
I'm only 18.
happens.
I don't want to die!